Hanifan live from LA, and we'll also be talking about what Doctor Who shows were broadcasted this day in the past. Now let's roll on for the opening credits and get the show started. And kia ora, good evening, and welcome to 0800 Tardis Live here on this, was it January the 6th, 2020, back around again. So, before we kick into the main show here, I do want to sit down there and put it out to our firefighters, particularly those who have been deployed from New Zealand over to Australia to go and help out with the Australian super fires, as it can be described there. I've got some pictures here from John Parker, which I'm going to have them pop up on screen in a moment. These pictures are John Parker is a rural firefighter in New Zealand. He's also a good friend of mine, and these are pictures that he has taken while over in Australia, fighting with the fires and that sort of thing, just showing you the sort of carnage and devastation that's in there, and just remembering that these are very, it's quite unusual times that we're in, but it'll just sit there and just show there. And these are pictures you probably won't see anywhere else as well, because they were taken by him, and he shared them over Facebook over the last week since his deployment. Yeah, it's quite some very scary stuff, as you can sit there and see there of some of the pictures there. And just give a bit of a reminder, I mean, you're looking at a town here that normally would have sun flying right through, and it's just completely covered like a cloudy day, but there's no rain. And there's the fire trucks all ready to go out for deployment when needed, and I've been doing a lot of 12 on 12 off sort of shifts to sit there and do that. I mean, that's New South Wales Rural Fire Brigade, and that forest doesn't look like it's in a particularly good state. Okay, thanks for sharing that with Hayden for going through that. Hayden's doing the cameras today, Daniel's away, so we've had a bit of a change. So now we're going to be talking about what was on Doctor Who screened here. Now, if we can, so effectively, this is what I'm watching the corner of my eye to make sure I've got all my lines right. What Doctor Who episodes were broadcasted on the 6th of January in 1960, different periods of time when they were broadcasted, but the first one is, if we can get the right screen to be on the broadcast, no, you've gone way too far on that one, the one that's next to host. No, not slideshow, Hayden. Hope. Yes, that's the one that looks like it. Yes. Yes, you've seen some of our little secrets on how we seem to get our graphics working perfectly fine. So the Enemy of the Worlds were broadcasted in, now where was it? It was 1968. So the 6th of January was one of the serials for the Enemy of the Worlds. This was the episode where both Patrick Troughton played the Doctor, and also played a character called Ramon Zelamander, who was a villain. So that was one of the episodes that were there. That was also where you had Jamie McCrimmon and Victoria Waterfield as the companions, which matches up with the time. So that was one episode that was broadcast on January the 6th. if we flick over to the next one, we've got the Three Doctors. Now this episode is the 10th Doctor Who anniversary episode. Ironically, though, it wasn't actually broadcasted on the 23rd of November 1973. It was actually broadcast. The first episode was broadcast on the 6th of January 73? Is it 6th of January? No. Oh, no. Wait a minute. This was This was part 2. No, part 1 was the 30th of December 1972. But this was the episode where John Pertwee has helps from his previous incarnations, the second Doctor Patrick Troughton and the first Doctor William Hartnell, and alongside with was it Katie Grant playing no, not Katie Grant, Katie Manning playing Jo Grant. God, this is a day of things there. So that was the 10th anniversary of Doctor Who, which is quite scary how far we've gone, because we've also had a 50th anniversary one as well. And actually, go by it was also the one with the second highest viewership ratings as well during the four parts of the Three Doctors. And also written by a very good author for Doctor Who. One of the best, I actually say there, is Terrance Dicks, which he also did the Five Doctors as well. Now, also, what else has been happening, and this is what happens when you print off too many notes. The next episode that was done on for Doctor Who was The Power of the Krolls. Now, that was a story between Tom Baker and was it with Romana as a companion, and it was the second to last serial of Mary Tan playing Romana. If you do remember back in after Mary Tan had her series and Romana regenerated from being Mary Tan to Lila Ward. So this was a little bit before her regeneration, and it will be the second to last was it the Power of Crawl serials as well. And now if we go down to the last one of the episodes, we'll also have the Warrior of the Deeps. Now this was also another episode broadcast on January the 6th. Now this one it was done in 1984. So that was a bit after the Five Doctors. And this was one where I think it was done on a Friday and a Saturday and a Sunday format, because these were episodes that were the first two parts of the episode were broadcast one day apart, and then a week later the next two parts were done. But this one was alongside with Peter Davison, and it would be companions. Was it Tegan Javanka, played by Janet Fielding, and Visla Turlo, played by Mark Strickson. So these were the Doctor Who episodes that were screened there on this date in the past. Now, if we flip back to lovely host, the joys of what's happening here, and now coming live from Burbank, California, we've got William Hanifan. How are you going there today on this glorious 6th of January in New Zealand, but 5th of January in Burbank?
Oh, nice cool evening here in Burbank, California.
And how's the weather treating you over there?
Oh, it's been mild, cool at night. Very mild in the afternoon, Nice California winter.
Yeah, well, we've got the summer there, and as earlier seen in the show, some of those pictures of the Australian bushfire definitely sits there and says a hell of a lot. And I'm glad I'm in little New Zealand, but out to our Australian counterparts over there, and with the firefighters definitely fighting. I mean, California's had their fair share of experience with bushfires as well, and over their summer.
Yeah, I think it's a reverse situation. When your summer happens, you have fires. When our summer happens, we have fires.
Yeah, that's something like that. So now, I'm going to take a punt here. You've watched Spyfall, both part 1 and part 2?
Yes, I watched part 2 today, and I thought it was an excellent conclusion to the program. I think Doctor Who has taken a new direction, which is something that it needs to do. It needs to renew itself and not be so much like the previous incarnation. And it was quite frightening and suspenseful. Kind of a modern day take on the sci-fi horror genre with a lot of unpredictability in it. So I think it's an excellent start to the new series.
No, definitely, definitely. And what do you think about the new Master?
I think they cast somebody who was definitely uh, very interesting in his approach to the Master. Someone that had researched the character from Roger Delgado to John Sim, mixing the calculated madness with the maniacal craziness, of different versions, and it lends itself to a real good casting and a real good approach for the Master. So I think I'm very happy with their choice.
Now, there is a fan theory out there that Sacha Dhawan's version of his Master is at a different point in timeline to Michelle Gomez's version of the Master, Missy, and some people believe that Missy timeline actually comes after the current Master's timeline.
Well, it does lend itself to that. That it could be one of the Masters after John Sim, because you really don't see a lot of the elements of Missy in his Master. And I guess the Doctor doesn't really seem too surprised that he is acting in such a way, not having brought up, oh, well, I thought you had wanted to redeem yourself. There's no discussion of that. So I think she probably knows that it may be a Master prior to Missy.
Yeah, no, certainly. That's definitely a lot of fan theories that are out there. I mean, actually, what's your opinion on Michelle Gomez playing the Master?
Oh, I thought she was wonderful. I definitely a wonderful zany take on the character. I think that Doctor Who and the mythology behind Doctor Who lends itself to change and things not remaining the same. I mean, things were such a way for so long because that's the way society expected them to be. But now, since things are a lot more fluid in this day and age, the show's kind of moved with that. And by casting her as the Master and of course casting Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor has really brought a new element to the show, and it isn't so restrictive anymore.
Yeah.
So I think she was a wonderful Master, and I think that she made way for Jodie to become the next Doctor, and I think that was a good choice as well. I think a lot of people expect things to be a certain way, but Doctor Who really is all about change. It's not about staying the same.
Exactly. That's definitely correct. Now, one thing I want to know is, when did you first watch Doctor Who?
Well, like late 1973, early 1974, we in Chicago area where I was growing up got the Pertwee episodes several months after they aired in the UK. That was one of the areas that had a good relationship with the BBC, and my dad and I used to watch it, and it's probably the first science fiction that I can remember, aside from Star Trek, which was on when I was really little.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was something that my dad and I could watch together because it had a very James Bond feel to it, and my dad always enjoyed those movies, and of course I've always enjoyed those movies, and so the Pertwee era, he's my Doctor.
He's your doctor. Certainly, certainly. And what was your favourite episode during the John Pertwee era?
Well, it's funny. It's the same as what John's was, and that's the Damons. I really loved the interaction between Pertwee and Delgado in that, and the fact that they had the entire unit staff, and they were all on location. And then they brought in a very supernatural kind of Hammer horror element to it. So I would have to say the Damons was my favorite serial of all Doctor Who, to be honest with you.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And what were other good aspects from the John Pertwee era, since that's your highlight of Doctor Who, I should say?
Well, I really enjoy Spearhead from Space. I think it's probably one of the strongest first Doctor episodes after a regeneration of any of them. But there were so many of them. So much of the mythology that Doctor Who became about started in the Pertwee era. So many of the classic monsters, began there, from the Silurians to the Master, to the Autons. I mean, it was a very suspenseful era with, thoughtful episodes like The Green Death, which spoke about, climate change before climate change even became a thing.
Certainly.
Due to the fact that Barry Letts, the producer of the show, was a big advocate of environmental protection. So I guess I would probably have to say that I really enjoyed Spearhead, but the first episode that I ever saw was Terror of the Autons, and that scared the living bejesus out.
Roger Delgado's first episode as the Master as well.
It was absolutely amazing. I mean, for weeks and weeks after that, anytime I went shopping with my mom, I wouldn't leave her side because I was afraid of the mannequins in the stores and whatnot because of the Autons. I was afraid they were going to come alive and chase me down the hall, so.
Oh yeah, and the part that really actually gets me is considering that was the last Auton episode right up until the Christopher Eccleston's first episode in 2005.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. They left that. But of course, the new Doctor Who has taken so much from the classic series. As far as utilizing the monsters and whatnot, and for example, the compression eliminator, the little tool that the Master used to turn people into dolls. Well, that's been brought back by the new Master, and that was a Roger Delgado invention,
Yeah, that was his character back in the day. Yeah. And now the other part I want to sit there and talk about is the Three Doctors. Now, on this day, January the 6th, it's 1973, Doctor Who's had the Three Doctors episode. Now, that's something that's quite unique about today, is like this is one of the episodes that was broadcast on the same day back in time.
Yeah, it was really kind of a groundbreaking, idea to have different versions of the same character interact with each other. Something that, is everywhere now. Different versions of oneself, young, old, interacting with each other. But, of course, it had all that wonderful, suspenseful, typical, British sci-fi element to it, and brought everybody together into one, into one cohesive story. And I think it served the story for what it was, rather than catered for what the fans kind of wanted, which I think all the multi-Doctor stories afterwards were really geared towards what the fans would like, rather than what the story was driven to. Um, of course, a lot of people will say the 50th anniversary is an exception, but I think that was just a real difficulty for them to make, and the story served that well but they didn't really use all the assets they had at hand. I think one thing about the Three Doctors that you have to realize is that they were able to create a relationship between two different actors that played the Doctor and make it like a straight man and a funny man kind of vaudeville show, which was absolutely hilarious. And it's never been repeated and never duplicated. The Pertwee Troughton relationship, even at the conventions and whatnot, that I went to back in the '80s, they chased each other around stage incessantly.
Yeah, well, there were two that really got along with each other as well as past Doctors.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the classic Doctors really have gotten along with each other, and even over time, even Tom Baker's kind of softened up a little bit and gotten along with everybody. So, it's definitely one of those pinnacle moments in Doctor Who history, but I think also in television history. A 10th anniversary show bringing together all the previous people that played the role and figuring out an ingenious way to have them together, and a reason for them to be together.
Yeah, certainly. Now, the other thing I want to ask about is with Doctor Who. I'm just trying to think. Sorry, I've just completely lost it. When it's with Doctor Who in the past, what have been your favourite episodes on doing things?
Well, my second favorite Doctor from the classic era was always Tom Baker, and I always thought that some of the most amazing episodes of his were ones where he was not out in space doing things. My favorite was the Talons of Wang Chiang. I thought that was an ingenious episode that took from so many different elements and really made you feel like you were in that time period with a crazy man trying to get out of that time period.
Yeah, certainly. Now, have there been any areas around the world you've gone to where Doctor Who has been filmed?
Well, when I lived in the UK, I visited a few places, at least one quarry that I went to visit that they had filmed Doctor Who. One of the things that I noticed in the second chapter of Spyfall is they filmed some of that in the old TV center that they used to film Doctor Who in, that has since been abandoned by the BBC. They filmed it in some of the corridors, so it was kind of interesting to notice that they used actual history Doctor Who even in the modern day.
So that says in Television Centre before they moved to broadcast in the house next door.
Yes.
Certainly. Now, a bit about yourself. What prompted you to become a bit of a fan of Doctor Who, apart from watching it with your dad in the past? And what's got you to stuck with it for so long?
Well, it's intelligent sci-fi. It makes you think. It's one part goofy guy in a mask or a rubber monster running around, but the stories drive the episodes rather than the effects. So it was intelligent storytelling from the beginning. I think that's what I liked about it. And I also liked the quirkiness and eccentric nature of the main character. I mean, it made it okay to in the wintertime to wear a Tom Baker scarf to school, you know, and no one would even think that, you know, you were acting goofy. They were like, oh, well, you're lucky you have such a long scarf. It's really cold here in Wisconsin.
Yes, yes. Well, we all know what happened behind that particular story there.
So,
Oh, about how the person who went to knit it got given a whole heap of wool and knitted the whole lot.
oh yeah, knitted the whole thing,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us all the way from Burbank, California. Thank you for bringing yourself to, was it New Zealand, for this 0800 TARDIS interview.
Well, happy to do it. The second home to Wurzel Gummidge, my favorite John Pertwee show.
Oh, yes, yes, and that was, I think it was actually filmed down the lower part of the North Island as well. Thinking about it, I'm not 100% sure. I do know John Pertwee had a bit of a fascination to the Wairarapa back in the day. So, it probably was definitely down there.
Well, I've been certainly enjoyed talking to you on the other side of the world.
Not a problem. Well, thanks for joining me here. Okay, well, thanks for doing things. Well, thank you for watching us here on 0800 TARDIS Live. We'll upload a separate section here from the review from Carrick, since he promised to do a bit of a review before he sits there and takes his drive up to the Coromandel. So we'll upload that later on tonight as well. Thank you for joining us here on 0800 TARDIS. You can follow me on Twitter, which is Sam at 0800 TARDIS, or you can follow me on Instagram as Sam the Man with a Plan. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on 0800 TARDIS Live. Bye bye.